Tonight, Gladys is gone. The Premier resigns, holding her emotions in check, brought down by her relationship with disgraced MP Daryl Maguire and the corruption watchdog.
Resigning at this time is against every instinct in my being and something which I do not want to do. I love my job and I love serving the community.
Who will take over? Dominic Perrottet and Rob Stokes, the front runners to become leader of our state. All the analysis on an explosive day. Back in the sky, international borders to reopen in a matter of weeks with just 7 days of home quarantine. How it'll work. The tornado that left locals hanging on for dear life. Our Central West left battered and dazed with more bad weather happening now. And no grand final grudge match. The Penrith and Rabbitohs bosses play nice as Sydney makes an 11th hour bid to steal the showpiece.
This is 10 News First Sydney with Sandra Sully.
Good evening. It has been a truly momentous day in the history of our state. Gladys Berejiklian is no longer our Premier, brought down not by the pandemic, not by the bushfires, but by her ex-boyfriend, former MP Daryl Maguire. This is where it all happened, State Parliament in the heart of Sydney, where scandal and crisis talks have ended the career of Gladys Berejiklian. We have all the twists and turns of the day. First, here's our state political reporter, Lachlan Kennedy.
After 1,712 days as New South Wales Premier,
Resigning at this time is against every instinct in my being and something which I do not want to do. I love my job and I love serving the community, but I have been given no option following the statement that's been issued today.
That statement released by the corruption watchdog an hour earlier. ICAC announcing a public inquiry into her conduct while in a relationship with former Wagga MP Daryl Maguire. In particular, her role in awarding 2 state government grants, $5.5 million to the Australian Clay Target Association and $20 million for the Riverina Conservatorium of Music.
As it is clear from the ICAC statement, the issues which it is investigating are historic matters that have already been the subject of numerous attacks on me by political opponents in the last 12 months.
Regardless of what ICAC finds, the mere fact it's investigating is enough to end her career. She entered Parliament in 2003, rising to Treasurer and Transport Minister. Having overseen the Metro and Opal cards, she took over from Mike Baird in 2017. He wrote today, "I am totally devastated like many in New South Wales. Gladys has led with passion, tenacity and strength. We will miss her." In her first press conference after taking over from Baird, she set a standard.
When it comes to matters of integrity, I will be stronger, not weaker, and I want to make that point very clear.
While accusations her government pork-barrelled millions in public funds put fresh scrutiny on that standard.
But if the accusation is that the government favoured certain areas, well, that's an accusation we'll wear. It's not an illegal practice.
Gladys Berejiklian returned to it today in her final public address. Key supporters visibly upset in the room.
As the leader of the New South Wales Government, I have expected the highest standards of myself and my colleagues. I have made it clear on numerous occasions that if any of my ministers were the subject of allegations being investigated by an integrity agency or law enforcement, then he or she should stand aside during the course of the investigation until their name was cleared.
Not only does she leave the top job, where in 2019 she became the state's first elected female premier, but she also leaves state parliament. A by-election date is still to be set, but flowers are already being delivered to her North Sydney office. The people of Willoughby have voted Gladys Berejiklian in 5 times. In her inaugural speech back in 2003, she said they have every right to place high expectations on her and she will work to show that their trust is well placed. It is a trust she maintains to this day she has not broken.
I state categorically I've always acted with the highest level of integrity. History will demonstrate that I've always executed my duties, again, with the highest level of integrity for the benefit of the people of New South Wales, who I have had the privilege to serve.
I've always found Gladys to be a person of the highest integrity. She has been a trusted friend and a very respected colleague.
While from State Labor leader Chris Minns, "For all our disagreements, I never doubted Gladys's dedication to New South Wales or her work in the service of it."
An extraordinary day for sure. Lachlan's with me now. Lachlan, the big question is, who will take over?
That is a very big question, and the answer, well, we're going to find that out when Liberal MPs vote in a party room meeting currently scheduled for 10 o'clock next Tuesday morning. There has been posturing going on for several weeks. We had an inkling this was coming, but we still have no firm answer. Here are the main candidates. Dominic Perrottet, the Treasurer and the Deputy Liberal Leader. It had been thought he had the numbers all locked up, but that has become less certain as the weeks have come on. Planning Minister Rob Stokes, another serious contender, and someone who some moderates have told me they would prefer to Perrottet, and the moderates will be key. The other big names, Tourism Minister and Penrith MP Stuart Ayres, as well as the Attorney General and the Cronulla MP Mark Speakman. Now there he is there. Now I understand the dominant moderate faction, whose numbers will be key, they are planning to meet either tonight or early tomorrow to decide who their preference will be. Sandra, the other consideration is the government currently doesn't control the numbers in the lower house. It relies on independents. So making sure they are happy is another big consideration.
Watch this space.
Indeed.
All right, Lockie, thank you as always. So what about the man who ended the career of the Premier? Gladys Berejiklian had her private life exposed at an ICAC inquiry last year. It was revealed she had continued a relationship with former MP Daryl Maguire, despite allegations of corruption against him.
18 years after she first won the seat of Willoughby, Gladys Berejiklian's stellar political run ran out.
I've had to make an extremely difficult decision overnight, but one which I feel obliged to do because of the love and respect I have for the people of New South Wales.
Except maybe one, her former number one.
What did you mean by him always being your numero uno?
I think I think what I would have meant that there is that in my personal life I placed importance on how I felt about him.
Last year, the Premier landed in the ICAC hot seat after it sensationally exposed her secret 5-year relationship with disgraced MP Daryl Maguire.
Are you still in a close personal relationship with Ms Berejiklian?
Oh, not after the events of this, I wouldn't be, no.
But she was still forced to lay her private life bare.
I trusted someone that I'd known for a long time and I feel really, really let down.
Their phone calls were caught by corruption watchdogs' ears.
You know my little friend?
Not really. Don't worry.
You do?
I don't need to know. Which little friend are you talking about?
And it looks like we finally got the Badgerys Creek stuff done. That's good. I'll be glad when that's done because I'll make enough money to pay off the debts, which would be good. Can you believe it? In one sale.
I can't believe it.
And not just your future personally, but a potential future for both of you going forward, is that right?
Yes, in a relationship, yes, that's right.
Today, the ICAC opened another devastating chapter. Over 10 days, it will hear if she was liable to allow or encourage the occurrence of allegations of corrupt conduct by Mr Maguire, if she was in a position of conflict between her public duties and her private interest.
My resignation as Premier could not occur at a worse time, but the timing is completely outside of my control, as the ICAC has chosen to take this action during the most challenging weeks of the most challenging times in the state's history.
It's been a brutal battle. Another Liberal Premier, Barry O'Farrell, fell on the ICAC sword over a bottle of Grange 7 years ago. His successor, Mike Baird, slashed ICAC's budget. It lost 6 full-time investigators. The cuts continued under Premier Berejiklian.
Look, we've seen in excess of 11 million stripped from the ICAC budget over the term of this government. Well, I think it's the case that all of us behave better when we know that someone's watching.
As the flowers continue to pour in, the fight to clear her name now lies ahead, knowing life can be strange. Undoubtedly, the worst relationship of her life led to her current partner, her defence lawyer at the ICAC, Arthur Moses SC.
At times we all stumble, we pick ourselves up, we dust ourselves off and start again stronger and wiser than before.
Ali's live now from Gladys Berejiklian's electorate. Ali, how are people reacting there?
Sandra, take a look. People are speaking down here.
We love Gladys! We love Gladys! We love Gladys!
Young, old, they've all been coming down here in a steady stream, bringing flowers, big floristry bunches, flowers picked from their gardens. There's no doubt she's been beloved in her electorate. Here's what some of the other people who were down here today had to say.
She's led us through this very difficult time, bushfires plus COVID, in a very capable way.
Devastated, absolutely devastated at the way she's going.
Who are they for?
Gladys.
Why?
Because she's not being the Premier anymore.
Did you like her as Premier?
Yeah.
As you can see, Sandra, there's a lot of love for Gladys Berejiklian down here. These people want to know how they can get her back. Long live Gladys, it says. Elsewhere around the state, people are putting their jackets, their blazers out for Gladys Berejiklian. That's starting to trend on social media. People want to know when they might be able to see her back. There is certainly a lot of love for Gladys Berejiklian, but it's interesting to note we haven't seen a New South Wales Premier come to the end of their term since 2005 with Bob Carr. That's the last time we saw one of our Premiers see out their term.
All right, Ali, thank you. Well, I want to take you now to Charlotte Goodlett. Charlotte, the story of Gladys Berejiklian, it is quite a remarkable one.
It certainly is, Sandra. In many ways, it truly was an Australian story of success. Originally from Manly, the eldest of 3 daughters of Armenian immigrants. She didn't learn English until she was 5 years old, but still ended up as president of the New South Wales Young Liberals, just the 3rd female to do so. She won pre-selection in Willoughby in 2003 before becoming Transport Minister in the O'Farrell government in 2011. After Barry O'Farrell resigned, another victim of ICAC, she became the new leader Mike Baird's deputy. When he left politics in 2017, she took over, becoming the 45th Premier of New South Wales, the 2nd woman to hold the post after Christina Keneally. She won the 2019 state election and has been a largely popular figure since. She's led us through the bushfire crisis, the black summer of 2019-2020, as well as drought and now a once-in-a-century pandemic. So a tough couple of years, and we'll look at that in more detail, Sandra. But for now, let's take a moment in an almost unbelievable day in the history of state politics.
All right, Charlotte, thank you. Well, this does leave our state in unprecedented territory. Gladys Berejiklian had vowed to see us through the pandemic, but now, just days away from the end of lockdown, that will not happen.
Just 2 days ago, Gladys Berejiklian ended her daily COVID update with this.
I hope the people of New South Wales in good time will appreciate that, rightly or wrongly, every time we made a decision, it was in the best interest of our community with the best information we had.
It was to be an epitaph for a leader who at time rode the highs of pandemic popularity, famously labelled the woman who saved Australia, and just this morning, the 4th most powerful person in the country. That is now all history.
Serving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. Please know that every day I gave it my all and worked as hard as I could to create a better future for our state and its people.
It has been 19 months since the first cases of COVID were detected here.
Unfortunately, that virus increased in its seriousness and its spread. We're being cautious in New South Wales.
But with predictions hundreds of thousands of lives would be lost, the response was unprecedented. The most controlling public health orders ever made. An economy shattered, jobs lost, and millions of lives thrown into chaos.
We are not anywhere near the worst of this. No expense will be spared to make sure we keep public safe at all times.
And mistakes had horrific consequences. The Ruby Princess disaster exposed flaws in public health policy and led to over 900 infections and 28 deaths.
Can I now apologise unreservedly to anybody who suffered as a result of the mistakes that were outlined in the report undertaken by individuals within the Health Department.
Her relationship with other state leaders at times testy as New South Wales became a pariah state.
And that's the chaos they're creating.
Well, I don't think Gladys Berejiklian should be criticising anyone, frankly. I think she's got enough of her own internal problems.
There was, though, little she couldn't shrug off, with polls showing overwhelming numbers of voters backed her handling of the pandemic. The Delta variant, though, would prove the toughest challenge yet. Criticised for acting too slowly to shut Sydney down. What's followed has been our longest ever lockdown and a mass vaccination program at a speed among the best in the world. But with Freedom Day just 10 days away, a health system under strain and predictions hospitalisations are yet to peak, it is clear for Gladys Berejiklian this was the job she wanted to see out.
My only regret will be not to be able to finish the job to ensure the people of New South Wales transition to living freely with COVID. However, I'm extremely confident that whoever succeeds me will be more than capable.
Ursula Hager for 10 News First.
To other news now, and after a year and a half, Australia is opening up. International travel brought forward back in just a matter of weeks, with just 1 week of home quarantine required on return.
Stuck in an 18